everyone. Good Monday to you. Welcome to the Light Gate. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We're live on Roku. We are on YouTube as well as Facebook. Our radio listeners, we love it when you're hearing us, and we know you can't see what we present, so we will absolutely give you as good a verbal visual as we can attain for you to know that what we are showing. I hope you all have a great night with us. We have a great guest, and I want to just get this ball rolling. So, Preston, go.
Thank you, Dolly, and thank you all for joining us tonight on what is episode 58 of The Light Gate. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about our guest tonight. He's returning. He had a very popular response to his previous episode, and we only barely skimmed the surface of his extensive knowledge. So I'm excited, and I'll get to him in just a moment. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Preston Dennett. I am your host. My lovely co-host is Dolly Saffron, the subject of our book, Symmetry, a True UFO Adventure. I do want to give a quick shout out for my latest book, just released, science fiction stories. I love UFOs, don't get me wrong, but I also like science fiction. And yeah, if you guys are interested in science fiction, check it out. It's called Wild Speculation. It's got a couple of award-winning stories in there. It's kind of how I got involved in the UFO field. I was hoping to write science fiction, but found out UFOs were real and decided, you know what? It's much funner and more interesting to write about real aliens than science fiction ones, but still love science fiction. All right. I also wanted to let people know that there is a kind of bit of interesting news in the UFO field. Lou Elizondo, who is a pretty major figure in the disclosure movement in terms of whistleblowers, has just put out a new book. I haven't read it yet. I wonder if any of you guys have. I'd certainly be interested to hear what it's about. I'm planning on checking it out. I just haven't had time yet. Okay, now let's quickly, very quickly, I promise, Dolly, say hello to all you people here in chat. Maybe not all of you, but certainly some of you, because again, it's because of you we do this show. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. And I'll just say a quick hi to some of you, including Catmaster Trash. Hello, love that name. And Studio Opinions, very cool. All right, and SJ playing COD Mobile, a bit early, that's awesome. Early is always good. And Dawn Curtis, hello. And W. Decker and Julie Farrell and Thirsty, thank you for joining us. Who else do we got here? Louise, always nice to see you here, Louise. You're one of our regulars, so thank you, thank you, thank you. CT Guitar Guy 85 says, hey, Dolly, and a big heart. Hi, Ruth Kleiber. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, this is going to be a good show, I promise. The last one was so interesting. W. Decker, namaste. Namaste. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just never gets old. I can't say thank you enough. Endless gratitude to you. You are awesome. J.R. Amadeus Schiffer. It is now time for the Light Gate. Yeah. We have Renee Cruz. Thank you for joining us, Renee. And thank you, Louise. Oh my goodness, you guys really warm my heart. Louise, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, it means a lot. Bob, wow. So nice to see you here. Thank you for the very generous donation. I'm lisping there. Dolly, I still get nervous.
It's okay. Sorry.
Just breathe deep, Preston. You're good. Okay. Catherine Fourfeathers, hello. Hi, and Janice Connett, and Susan Lawrence, and W. Decker. Thank you so much. We are working hard at this, so you guys, this is very much appreciated. Hello, Alicia from Indiana. As we said, that's a pretty active state. And Droncklander and Jay Burke.
Hi.
better wrap this up pretty quick before I get in trouble because we need to get to our guest. Just a couple more, Dolly. Jake Hagan Thompson, hello. Oh, it'd be awesome if you could check out the book. I'd appreciate it. I'm really wondering what people think of it. Hi, Jen. Hello, Star Orchid and Arthur. Oh, and Star Orchid, thank you. Thank you so much.
Very much so.
Rush by you like that. Very, very nice of you. And White Dragon, thank you so much. I really appreciate your comments on my YouTube channel. So thank you, thank you. Peg Casagrado. Goodness gracious, we have a nice audience here, don't we?
Yes.
Patricia and Hector Eduardo Ianare from Argentina. Very cool. We are reaching the whole world. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Hello, Ryan Gooden and Trish from Paso Robles. And Studio Opinions. And I'm almost done, I promise. Chris, pause.
Team.
And Ryan Gooden and Morgan and Pogo Joe. And I better get going here because I will get in trouble. Chapari and Trish Jacobs. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Your donations just are so amazing. Thank you, Trish and RGP and Scuba Maru. And of course, White Dragon. I already brought you up, but thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's just get started before I drive you all crazy. Okay, there is our guest on the little ticker below. But let me just tell you a little bit about Donald R. Schmitt. He is our guest tonight. He's returning for a second appearance. He's the author and founder of the International UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell, former co-director of the J. Allen Center for UFO Studies. And let's see what he is: author, journalist, lecturer. And let me see, what else can I say here? During his time at CUFOS, the Center for UFO Studies, Don served for 10 years as the director of special investigations. Along with Thomas J. Carey, he co-authored the books Witness to Roswell, The Children of Roswell, and Inside the Real Area 51, all of which, and this says a lot, became bestsellers. He's the North American representative at the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research and co-producer at the Phenomenon movie. And of course, no surprise here, he has appeared on all the big radio shows and podcasts, including Coast to Coast, spoken at numerous conventions. He's been in this field for a very, very long time. It's a true honor and delight to have him on the show. You can find a link to his Facebook page in the show notes. So let's just bring him on because he's not going to be able to be here for the full 2 hours, just 90 minutes. So get your questions ready early, and we will do a little bit of a half-hour show. Unfortunately, without our main guest, but that's all right. We got him here now. Hi, Don.
Welcome back.
Good evening, Dolly. Hi, Preston. Good to be both back with you, so thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming back. Your episode was really popular. Roswell continues to fascinate me, and I think everyone in the UFO field. And you're the go-to guy when it comes to Roswell.
Well, and in fact, I leave for New Mexico this week, and it's another research trip.
Oh, boy.
I have 3 new witnesses. Now, granted, the first 10 now all passed away, but we're still tracking down the families, people whose fathers, mothers were directly involved, and with a good chance that they received deathbed confessions, testimony at the very end from these loved ones. And even albeit secondhand, when it corroborates the firsthand, it solidifies the firsthand.
There you go.
And as we all know, deathbeds are admissible in a court of law. So we're finding that unanimously that no one is claiming at the moment in their last few minutes and hours of life that this was anything conventional. they are all, confiding finally to their families that this indeed was the crash and recovery of a craft of unknown origin and its crew.
Mhm.
And that here we are now going on 77 years later, and it still remains the granddaddy of all UFO cases.
So how many witnesses is it at total count by this point?
We've interviewed to date over 600 witnesses, either directly or indirectly involved. And well over 150 of them are firsthand. In other words, they were actively involved with the recovery operation. They handled the wreckage. They witnessed and handled the bodies, the remains. They were on the special flights transporting all the physical evidence to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, which was a predecessor to Area 51, as people would label it. And even the civilians involved, the ranchers, because this happened out in the high desert of central New Mexico. And it's just that the Roswell Army Airfield, which happened to be just south of Roswell, just south of town, but it was the headquarters of the 509 bomb group. This was the first atomic bomb squadron in the world. They were the elite within the military at that time, where they selected the best officers, the best pilots, crew, doctors, nurses. They all happened to be stationed in Roswell in that summer of 1947. And they're all just coming off of World War II. And more historically relevant, this was the squadron that had just dropped the 2 atomic bombs on Japan, ending the war in the Pacific at that time. And so, the very idea that, well, they needed more excitement, they needed something else, to raise their level of curiosity, and they created this whole crash of a flying saucer back at that time. One of the officers told us, he said, we had the atomic bomb. We sure didn't need flying saucers to, pique our interest throughout the course of a day. So, but they were the ones who then put out that press announcement on Tuesday, July 8th, that they had actually captured a flying saucer. It's a matter of historic fact. The United States Army Air Corps actually claimed we got one.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. The rest, as far as the way it was suppressed, the way they changed that announcement within 5 hours, and it became nothing more than a weather balloon with a radar reflector kite. Mm-hmm. And that explanation would stand for the next 30 years until the very intelligence officer, Major Jesse Marcel, who was ordered to pose with the substituted balloon and kite. And so he served as their patsy, their fall guy.
Poor guy. Man.
And then 30 years later, after he was diagnosed with terminal emphysema, he realized, well, they can't hurt me anymore. So I've listened to their broken promises about the truth all coming out someday. Just be a good soldier, Marcel. You'll be vindicated. You'll be exonerated. You'll be a hero. The truth will all come out. And so after 30 years, and he only has so much time left, he realizes they're never coming out with the truth. So he does. He goes public. And he makes that most profound, direct statement, and I'll quote him, quote, being familiar with all materials, both foreign and domestic, this was nothing made on this earth. And that was in reference to the wreckage which he held in his own hands. And then all the other officers that we would track down and would corroborate that very statement. the civilians who were involved, who were silenced, who were threatened into submission, and assuring them that there was power in numbers, that the more people that come together and defy the government and state the truth, the less chance they can retaliate, that there's much less chance of reprisal on their part. And much to our surprise, more and more of these people did step forward. They signed sworn affidavits. They provided video depositions, and then the deathbed testimonies, as I mentioned earlier. So with over 600 people stating that this indeed did happen, that it was the first press release, which was the truth, which was the correct historic account of what happened back in July of 1947.
Well, with
And so
600 witnesses, that has got to be just the tip of the iceberg as well.
Right.
And I have to say, I interviewed this lady for one of my books, who they moved from China, where they were staying at the ambassador's place, to Roswell in 1947. Her dad was very highly placed in the Navy. She's certain he had something to do with it. Never said a word. He went to his grave with it. So this must have been thousands of people.
And in fact, you're absolutely correct, Preston. And it's the reason that I've also been blessed in being invited to speak in as many foreign countries as I have. And it's demonstrated not only that Roswell has become a household word, but you mentioned China. I've lectured in China on 3 separate occasions. Wow. I've had dinner with Russian cosmonauts in Moscow after lecturing. I've lectured Japan, Australia, throughout South America, throughout all of Europe, the UK, and so on and on and on. And I can't tell you how often I have had foreign dignitaries, foreign diplomats, people in high offices in these foreign countries who would confide to me what they had heard, what they knew, that things coming even through their own foreign channels, that it wasn't a balloon, it wasn't anything conventional, that it was something totally extraordinary. And to hear it then from foreign individuals, to me, then it also demonstrated the possibility that wouldn't a true irony be that this would all finally be disclosed? This would come out from a foreign source.
That would be awesome. You know, our government's not going to do it. I know. What's amazing is it's 1947 and this occurred. They did admit it, and then they clamped down on it, and they've been clamped down ever since. And they've clamped down everything since that time.
Yes.
And we can have people coming out, whistleblowers, people trying to tell the truth, and it's not going to matter a hill of beans to the general population anywhere, really, until the government says something. And we really need to start believing you and Hynek and all of them who had anything to do with this, that's the true disclosure. You're the true disclosure. This is not something the government's ever going to offer, and it is true and provable.
You could not be more correct, Dolly, in the idea that we think that the very arbiters of the cover-up, for now going on 77 years, are finally going to capitulate. They're finally going to have some pangs of guilt and realize, well, maybe it's time, we roll over and just present all our findings to the general public. Will never happen, because they don't even answer to their bosses on Capitol Hill. Yeah. They don't even answer to their commander-in-chief in the Oval Office. And so we've often heard that the new order, the growing ranks of new officers, that they often lament to us that they are concerned that the old order has not passed it down to the new. No. That, as you mentioned, Preston, that with the Chinese diplomat, the idea that more times than not, these people take it to their graves. And that's what's so sad. When you think about the amount of information that through the decades that people have deprived us of, whether for national security or whether just for the element of secrecy. And just that word. And if we would do our due diligence and look into history and how even John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, decried the idea of secret societies and secret keepers, that it empowered them, that it made them feel as though they possessed something that they were withholding, and as though that elevated their posture within certain government ranks. And there's been this long-term deterrence in people, and we see it, that they are threatened. They will receive death threats. They will be forced out of the country. I mean, who in God's name would have ever thought 25 years ago that you would have an Edward Snowden, that whether you think he's a hero or a traitor, but that you would have to flee to Russia for asylum from the United States. I mean,
well, do we know if anyone has actually lost their life over this incident? Because there's the story, of course, of the nurse.
We've heard for years different family accounts of disappearances, of strange deaths, accidents. The very rancher, the ranch foreman, W.W. Brazo, who first reported the crash and then had hell to pay thereafter. There were numerous strange deaths within his family. And in fact, his son, Vernon, who was a firsthand witness, not only to the wreckage, but also the bodies, he would disappear. He returns home from the Navy, and within months, he disappears, never to be heard from again.
Oh,
and again, these aren't just coincidences, because it's
No, they're not.
I mean,
No, sorry, I disagree with that. No, they are not coincidences.
it's as though
that's up.
anytime someone became a loose cannon,
Yeah.
someone was speaking out of turn, that they had to be silenced.
Right.
They had to be shut down. Not just shut up, but shut down. And I mean, we've seen it for again throughout history. We've seen it with the Kennedy assassination, to bring that up once again, that how many of the witnesses strangely died or disappeared before they were questioned, before they testified to the Warren Commission. And you reach a certain age that you realize that there's no such thing as coincidence, that everything is contrived, everything is scripted. And as a result, do we just idly sit back and go, well, fine, that's what I would like to believe? Or do you go, wait a minute, this isn't based on reality. These aren't the facts. And if we think we're going to get any closer to disclosure by trusting the government, you too may have the same situation. But I have colleagues that are just constantly scolding me, and Don, why don't you believe the government? How can you not believe? And it's like, are you people this naive? And I finally have concluded they are. It's because they've spent a lifetime sitting at keyboards. They've never been in the field. They've never talked to a witness.
Right.
They've never talked to a whistleblower. They've never actually had to risk having a door slammed in their face by approaching a possible whistleblower, and the feeling of failure, but then having to regroup and, okay, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try another approach, or I'm going to try it with the next possible source of information. So these people, they sit as Monday morning quarterbacks, and they tend to become more and more skeptical as they get older. And I finally concluded that their skepticism is not a result of the phenomenon not cooperating and landing in their backyard and saying, well, you were right all along, here we are, but their failure, the fact that they failed in their assigned mission in life, that they were going to come up with answers, to this, this enigma. And so again, it shows me a shortcoming. It shows me a level of unprofessionalism, that just because the answers aren't readily at hand doesn't mean they're not there. Doesn't mean that the truth isn't lingering or isn't over the next hill, isn't with the next witness. That we have to, as success is often labeled, that you have to keep pushing. Otherwise, you may stop just short of the finish line. And I, for one, I want to be on that finish line. I want to be there when the truth does finally come out.
I really feel for the witnesses, because they've got this push-pull going on. On one hand, I think they want to tell the truth. It's a big burden. On the other, I can see that they would be frightened. They want to do their duty also. So you've got a lot of things going on in these witnesses' heads that to get them to talk about it.
With Roswell, we are talking about the greatest generation, the World War II generation, where they were highly experienced, highly trained, and highly respected for keeping their secrets. The Manhattan Project, and like I couldn't recommend more highly the movie Oppenheimer, because it's very close to the truth in practically every aspect of the development of the atomic bomb and the aftermath, and then the what was unleashed and their concern, whether it was Oppenheimer, whether it was even Albert Einstein, that this was a power that we couldn't put back into the bottle, so to speak. And that we had to grow up overnight and realize that either we're going to remain as cool and level-headed as we can in every potential confrontation, or if madmen, God help us, should ever have their finger on the button, then all bets are off. Then it's too late to ever undo what happened back in 1945. But I mention that to both of you because these were also the people who were involved at Roswell. And to suggest that they were involved with an unprecedented situation just 2 years before, and then they faced this situation.
You make a very good point here. I want you to know that I know that there are 8 principal scientists who developed the bomb, and Einstein was one of them,
Yes,
as well. And I know that when Roswell happened, you bet your side note that they went straight to them about this and wanted their opinions.
Yes.
So they knew without a doubt they knew. They
In
also
fact,
knew what the government is capable of doing to them and their families. I mean, especially Einstein and Oppenheimer coming from where they did. And they weren't going to say a bloody word. And Einstein made quips or veiled comments about the situation. And you can go back and read through his stuff and read through anything that he put out. And he always veiled it, but he always said, they're here.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to wake up.
I hope there's a secret diary out there somewhere from some.
I know. Well, you mentioned diaries, Preston. That's some of the things we've had. A number of diaries that we've come across. We've come across some old Army log books, and what was interesting is one of the adjoining witnesses, one of the adjoining ranches to the crash site, and there was the matriarch of the ranch at that time. She kept a daily diary down to the weather conditions and what everyone was what their tasks were on the ranch at that time. And the family led us to the entire collection through the 1940s up till the 1970s. And obviously we were looking for that crucial month of July of 1947. And guess which diary was missing?
That one. Yep. Naturally.
Coincidence.
Government's not afraid to do anything, including burn things down. My father was an airborne ranger, and he was involved in a lot of stuff. And we decided to go back and pull information, and we knew where it was. To my horror, the place that it was stored, his entire unit, all of it, all of the original men in this group burnt to the ground in Missouri. They lost everything, all of it. Not an ash was left. And it shook me to the core of my being, because it's not, I mean, that's just one faction. There are plenty all the way across the board. Look at NASA, all their tapes, everything is gone, they say. All right. They have no problem disappearing information and rewriting everything, and they've gone to great lengths. And people still think that they're going to disclose, and they're not. They've leaked it out.
There's no paper trail. They, as evidence, when the late Congressman Stephen Schiff was working with us, and he was representing his constituents in New Mexico, and he sent 3 separate letters to then Secretary of Defense Les Aspin, wanting him to direct, as the Secretary of Defense, direct the chair of the Joint Chiefs to open up the files on Roswell. Well, he didn't even do him the courtesy of responding to his request. Nothing. Unheard of. And not once, but 3 times. So then he went through Congress's own investigative body at that time, which was the General Accounting Office, the GAO. And they requested a systematic search through all branches of the military, all departments of the government, for any and all documents on Roswell. Well, every one of them came up totally empty-handed.
Right.
In fact, there was a FBI document which we already were in possession of. We knew about that. But the State Department was then also brought in because the White House wasn't cooperating. Obviously, the Pentagon was throwing up all types of obstacles. And they finally told Congressman Schiff that what had happened was that for that entire month of July of 1947, all the records, all the files, all the telexes, all the photographs, everything were destroyed at the most crucial, most sensitive, most top secret military facility in the world, bar none.
Right.
And Congressman Schiff didn't believe that. I will never forget when I immediately called him. And I thought, well, that's going to end our working relationship. And it took some time for him to finally be brought to the phone. And when he did, and God love him, when the first words out of his mouth were, Don, and I'm going to quote him, so excuse the language for a moment, but it was, Don, they're a bunch of goddamn liars. And I need to get reelected, and then we're going to hit them twice as hard.
Wow.
And then we know what happened with him. He died of a very rapid skin cancer within months after he was reelected at the age of 51.
I remember that.
So again, coincidence? No. Even as oncologists had contacted me that he wanted to talk. He wanted to pass on to me what the congressman had told him just before he died. And I couldn't wait to get out to Albuquerque to meet with him at the hospital. Couldn't reach him. I finally had a nurse try to, bring him to the phone. You're the one who invited me. You're the one who requested that I would visit with you to discuss this very, sensitive matter. The nurse comes back after a repeated phone calls, and she says, the doctor says you should never call again. He has nothing to say to you. Don't ever call us ever again.
Yeah, he was already surrounded, and those people were in on it. Yeah.
They get the phone call. They get the threat. They're told. And both of you, I can't tell you how often we would track down a witness, and we would many times just on a blind, approach on our part, we wouldn't even contact them in advance. We would just go right to the door just to test their reaction.
Yeah.
And more times than not, it was, how did you find me? Who told you? Who told you about me? And then what we were also getting was, I was told never to talk to you specifically ever on this subject. So they were anticipating us in that regard. And so, but again, we were flattered. We were encouraged because in their taking us seriously, in their whole approach to their anticipation and working with us, I would be more concerned if they weren't paying attention. The fact that the closer we were getting, the more we realized we were being watched, we were being eavesdropped, witnesses were being called and told not to speak with us. And so, like the old saying, you don't receive the flack unless you're over the target. Well,
have
you
you yourself
over the target.
been the target of any, discouragement, shall we say?
No, because we had our very first press conference, Kevin Randall and myself, in Chicago, after our first book came out, UFO Crash at Roswell, which was made into the Golden Globe nominated movie Roswell.
What year was that?
The book came out in 1991, and then we filmed the movie in the fall of 1993 and premiered in July of 94.
That was with Kyle MacLachlan, right?
That's right, and Martin Sheen and Dwight Yoakam, and yeah, it was wonderful. And then we were consultants on the set, and we worked and got to meet with all, and they loved it. We couldn't. I mean, they every time we would finish a scene, we were being surrounded by the cast and crew who just had 100 questions.
Right.
Wow.
So, but at this press conference in Chicago, and there were easily 50 reporters in the room, we knew the question would come up. Do you expect to be harassed? Do you expect to be threatened? Do you feel that they're going to, try to scare you off of this case? So we had a response ready, which was basically, they know where we live. They can pay us a visit anytime they would like, but they had better send their best because that's what it will take.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was, we decided very early on that we were going to shine as much light as we could onto the investigation. That as long as you remain in the shadows, strange things can happen. And then people don't put two and two together.
Right.
But when you are going public, when you are writing books, when you're doing as all the media interviews possible, and you're encouraging the witnesses, and many of them, as in their own courage and bravery, that would be on Larry King with us. They would go on with George Norrie, and I can't tell both of you how often we would have Roswell witnesses, first 10 witnesses, on these shows with us. And it was like, we are united. We are standing together for the truth. And don't think twice about harassing or intimidating or, casting any fear into any of us.
Yeah.
Because then people are going to start asking, well, there's nothing to hide. Why are you threatening witnesses over it? If it's nothing more than a weather balloon device, here it is now 50, 60 years after. Why are you still paying attention? Why are you still monitoring the situation?
Yes.
So
I have personal experience
for them.
Yep.
So when you were last on the show, we talked a lot about the debris field and all of that, but we never really got to the actual crash site and the firemen who came there. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because some people might not be aware of Roswell. They live under a rock, but there was an actual craft, right?
Well, what always intrigued us was, how is it that the Roswell Sheriff's Department, which is within Chavez County, as well as the city fire department, they are limited within their jurisdiction. The debris field, which was reported by the ranch foreman, Mac Brazel, W.W. Brazel, is in Lincoln County, another county. So how is it that law enforcement and the fire department are involved in another county? And we kept hearing 35 miles north of Roswell, 35 miles. Well, the debris field in Lincoln County is 65 miles northwest of Roswell. So it kept suggesting something much closer. And then when we started talking to the families of the sheriff, his deputies, firemen who were involved, and they talked about going to a particular ranch, which we confirmed, just 35 miles north of town, and where they would observe not only the remains of a craft, an egg-shaped pod about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, wow, and two bodies. And they all describe a survivor. One was alive. And so we're talking about a separate crash site. We started to call it the impact site because the debris field was a result of a midair explosion. Even Major Marcel would describe that when they first arrived at the location, that based on the pattern of the debris and the fact that it covered an area of almost a mile long, that there was no impact crater. There was nothing to suggest that something had actually imploded, that something had hit the ground. So they immediately concluded this was a midair explosion. Now, the impact site is obviously where there was an impact, where this pod, this capsule, continued on for another 20 some miles before impacting just north of Roswell. On a specific ranch, there were ranch witnesses at this location. I mentioned the sheriff, his deputies, I mentioned the firemen, and then all the military who became part of that recovery operation. So you have multiple sites concerning one crash, one event. It wasn't a collision of two objects as some have suggested or theorized. It was part of the same event, but that there was this chain reaction of an explosion, the catapulting of a capsule or a pod, the inner cabin, from the actual ship. And then it would establish multiple locations that needed to be cleaned up. Craft bodies needed to be recovered. We can even tell you who were in the ambulance trucks recovering the body. I can even tell you who was posted behind the ambulance truck. I can even tell you who photographed as far as the bodies, as far as who was brought in as a professional photographer. And so we have allowed the evidence, we've allowed the chain of information to take us wherever it would. And I cannot emphasize enough to both of you that we were both total skeptics. We thought we would make a single weekend jaunt down to New Mexico and prove that this was nothing more than a balloon or something just as prosaic. And I'm proud to say we were wrong. We were totally wrong.
I can't imagine if this could have been kept, secret for so long. Sooner or later, it was going to come out with this many people. But gosh, it almost didn't.
But you make an excellent point, Preston, because so often colleagues, well, how is it that they managed to keep this a secret for all these years? Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a Roswell file. And the GAO's investigation on behalf of Congressman Stephen Schmitt, demonstrated that fact, where they then told him that the files, everything had been destroyed. No, it's all cryptically encoded. It's all specially coded in such a way that you wouldn't know where to even start looking. That's how the military does it. That's how the Manhattan Project, as a primary example,
Compartmentalized.
was compartmentalized. And then secondly, the witnesses have tried to come forward, like Major Marcel. They tried to tell the public the truth, but too often it's fallen on deaf ears. Too often these people have been character assassinated. They have been smeared. They have been relegated as far as to the conspiracy kookery category of such stories. And so it's also created a deterrence for the next person and the next person.
We've already got an assimilation of knowledge with this that I find dubious. I want to give you a hypothesis from my knowledge, from my experience, from my flight ability. Okay. We never fly alone. We have drones with us at all times.
Mm-hmm.
There are at least 2 or 3 with us at all times, depending on the size of the craft. A craft that's lost cohesion with a magnetic field line can lose containment in their energy. If they're not on batteries and they're still on nuclear, because they have nuclear running on board, they can use it. If they lose containment with that, the first explosion you heard was the bigger craft blowing itself to bits.
Right.
The second craft is the drone. It is egg-shaped. I want you to talk to Michael Schratt because he knows this.
I know Michael very well. Very well.
He will explain it in space.
We have
they have actual drones. They have pictures of them. He's got witnesses who've seen the drones. They are egg-shaped. He's got inside graphics of them and everything. And I'm telling you from my experience that if I was flying and I lost containment and we blew up, at least one drone would go down with us because they would be too close to us.
Mm-hmm,
so you do have 2 different vehicles. The drone would have had 2 bodies in it, only 2. Okay. And the other vehicle would have evaporated anybody in it. Because it's a nuclear blast, they would have vaporized. Okay. They would be gone. I want you to think about that because I think that you've all been lied to so much and misdirected in so many different ways that the last time we talked, I told you there were 2 vehicles. I'm in contact with DT and I'm telling you, I was told there were 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So y'all need to look at it that way. And you need to consider that as a viable explanation for the 2 different, for the long debris field that had no impact. Because once those vehicles break up, all you're going to get is pieces floating down in a line. Okay. And the drone would have landed not so hard. In other words, it wouldn't have completely broken up when it landed. And that's why you found bodies. Okay.
And if I may add another element to the incident, there was a secondary body site.
Okay.
Where 2 bodies were discovered 2.5 miles southeast of the debris field.
Okay, that could have been the bigger craft blowing them out then, and they could have landed. Yeah.
Surmised that it was either through the percussion of the explosion or the decompression, but it still was along the trajectory line from the debris field to the impact site. It's all along a very specific line.
Yeah. It is impossible, and they don't want you to know this. This is one of the reasons they hide information from everybody. They don't want you to know the truth. You can't shoot an ET vehicle down. The only way that this vehicle can be harmed or crash is magnetic field lines losing cohesion, losing containment, reactor containment, or their batteries blowing up on them. Those are the only reasons, because it's inside the field that they create, and they can do nothing about it at that point. But the field that surrounds these crafts is impenetrable, and most of the craft are impenetrable too. The only way you can get in one or crack it is to do a very specific thing, and I'm not going to say it out loud now. It is very specific. Even Michael Schratt knows this. Okay, and it breaks my heart that y'all have been lied to, because the government doesn't want you to know this about them. They hide every element of ET, anything, all their back engineering, all of it. They know more than they tell you. They don't want to be caught red-handed in what they've been doing. That's the point of knowledge.
They've been caught red-handed.
Well, caught red-handed, and also the culpability, the fact that they threatened, and we talked earlier about the very concept, the very thought that people may have been eliminated, that people were disappeared, people were kidnapped. The ranch foreman, he was kidnapped for 5 full days. Again, it's a matter of historic fact.
Right.
And why? And first of all, the military does not have any jurisdiction over civilians, no authority whatsoever, unless martial law be declared. Well, they couldn't declare martial law over a balloon. So, but they still broke the law. They still did it. And what's amazing is, and you mentioned, Dolly, as far as being lied to. Yeah, we realized that a lot of the military witnesses we were talking to, they were kind of testing the waters, and they were trying to see what we knew. And they wanted to, before.
Right. They're going to bleed you dry. Right.
We had one military source. We told him specific things about his background, and we'll never forget that he leaned back, and thank God he had a wall behind him. Otherwise, he would have tipped over in his chair. But he was so shocked by what we told him about his own involvement. And then he came forward and he went, "Damn, you guys are good." And it's not a matter of, well, okay, you have to be good, but you have to be better than good. You have to be better than them. And I think in many ways, we have filled in a lot of their gaps because Preston, you mentioned earlier, the compartmentalization. I mean, it's the common, element of the military, of the government. And the idea that the three of us, we may all have a piece of the action, but it's something, and I always remind people in the media that every time you speak to someone, whether the government or by the military, you have to consider that you're speaking with someone who has limited access to the full story.
Right.
They only have a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
I'm not limited to that. We're able to come at this from every direction.
Yeah, I know.
And as a result, you can ask me any question you want, and I'm not going to, well, I can't answer that. Or, I would rather not go there, that type of thing. What they're actually saying is they don't know. It's no different than when Colonel Richard Weaver, when they had the Project Mogul report in September of 1994. And the entire document was produced by a reserve captain in the Air Force, Captain James McAndrew. And why would you select someone in the reserves? Well, they're no longer attached. They have no access. And why would you select a lowly captain? Because they have no clearance to anything. And as a result, he becomes the expert on his research, on his alternative explanation.
Exactly. Misinformation, misdirection, smoke and mirrors.
He cannot make a mistake and say the wrong thing. It's all he knows.
Right.
And it's like every time we try to educate the media to this, it's again, they just don't get it.
Well, a lot of them got words already told to them behind the scenes that if you hear this, this, and this, it's dead to you. You can't use it at all.
Don't go there. You should.
You already have a problem with that.
Well, guys, we need to take a quick station ID break. And I also want to get to some questions so we don't run out of time, if that's all right.
Good.
Because there's like some 10 really excellent questions. But I do want to let you all know you are watching The Lightgate. I'm your host, Preston Dennett. My lovely co-host is Dolly Safran. Our guest tonight is Donald R. Schmitt, author of several books on Roswell and related subjects. He is definitely the go-to guy. We've discussed all kinds of interesting things about Roswell. There is a previous episode which you guys should check out. But we still have some more to go. But I do want to let you know that we are streaming live at 107.7 FM on the United Public Radio Network and on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM, both from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We're on Roku. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. I'm talking fast because I want to get back to our guest and these questions because I know our time is quite limited. So would now be a good time to jump to a few questions because there's some really cool ones here. Okay. I like this question from Dawn Curtis. She's asking, of all the interviews you have done with witnesses or family of, which was the most astonishing to you, and how will we get to hear the results of this new trip you are going on?
That's a good question.
Well, I guess I'll have to be back.
Yes,
We would love that.
So many touching witnesses, so many witnesses. I mean, I would be asked to be an honorary pallbearer at their father's funeral.
Oh.
I would receive Christmas cards from these people. I would make it a point to not, if I didn't talk to them on a regular basis, I would even make an effort to even visit with them whenever I happened to be within their proximity, that type of thing. But I'll cite an example of he was an MP. He was with the 390th Air Transport Unit in Roswell in 1947. And he was involved with the bodies at the B-29 hangar. It was called P3. It's now called Building 84. And his wife was the one who approached us. And she, was just disheartened by the fact that they were not able to sleep in the same bedroom for over 40 years because of his nightmares. The way he would jolt up in the middle of the night, night after night, because he couldn't get the image, the face out of his mind. He was just haunted by it. And it took us the better part of 2 years to get him to even talk to us. Mm-hmm. And when he finally did, he couldn't stop crying. He just kept, "You will never believe what I saw. You'll never believe what I saw." And he cried like a baby. He was at the big hangar. They were ordered to load up a number of gurneys into the back of an ambulance truck and take them over to the base hospital. One of the men stepped onto one of the sheets covering what was on the gurney, and it pulled away, and there he was within 6 inches of one of the faces of one of the bodies, and the eyes opened. Again, we think, well, why should that have bothered him? Doesn't bother me. Well, we've grown up with all of this.
Yeah, well, it's also because he was never believed after that. In other words, he had nobody to talk to.
And he couldn't, but he did tell his wife about it right after they got married. Yeah. And she knew all about this. And in fact, in the early 1950s already. But you are right about that, Dolly, that he just, and the worst of it is you can't prove it.
Right.
I mean, you can swear to God, you can swear on a Bible, but it's like, as we were, talking, at the beginning of the program, the idea that these people, they all possess something, they shared something that's totally unprecedented. Right. There was nothing in the books, in the literature, and there was nothing even in science fiction back at that time. Preston, how were alien beings depicted back at that time? Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and H.G. Wells. They look human. Yeah. Their spaceships were rockets because that's what, it's all we knew.
Yeah, the idea of extraterrestrials visiting our planet really came along with Roswell.
Yes, that's summer of 47, where the flying discs, the very phrase flying saucer was coined at that time, just 10 days before Roswell. So that would be one of the most significant. We could do another whole hour just talking about witnesses and what it took us to get them to finally break and talk. But the emotion, this was way beyond acting. That to watch a grown man cry as he's talking about, and when those eyes opened, and you're only inches away, it takes you beyond belief. It convinces you. Nobody's that good an actor.
All right. Well, we have like 10 more questions I'm hoping to get through. I think we touched on this already from Jen.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a nurse who was there looking after the bodies who spoke out and was silenced? Were they ever able to confirm her existence or track her down?
We the name, and you were talking about specifically the story that was provided to us by
Mortician Glenn Dennis. Yeah.
Oh, they're going to mess with us now. Don, you froze. Perfect.
Uh-oh. This is a long one, Dolly.
No, that bodes ill.
Can you hear us, Don? Because we cannot hear you.
Okay, I'm going to take you out and bring you back in. Maybe that'll help. Okay. Oh, no, he's not there. Let me try it again. All I see is the after picture. Nope, it knocked him out. That's why it froze. He left the room.
Oh, device not connected.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's having some connection difficulties. Hopefully. Thanks, Jen. You had to go and mention the nurse. But hopefully we'll get him back in a second.
Yeah.
So,
he needs to try to come back. I know. Oh, gosh.
Let me see if I can message him, but this is not looking good.
What time did he have to
go? In 20 minutes.
Oh.
He should still be here.
Come back. Come back, Don.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sending him a message right now.
Okay. It disappeared. He'll come back. It's going to recycle. Give it a second.
All right. So the ETs actually talked to you about Roswell?
Yes, absolutely. Talk to me about Roswell. When I was debriefed before I came out, he's trying. There he is. Okay, let me bring him in. Hi.
Yes, we had to mention the nurse. So,
but we've also we've had tornado warnings to the west of us, and we've had a squall line of bad storms coming through this evening. Okay. So that more likely being the case. So
it's a coincidence. We'll call it that.
Yeah, it's a coincidence. Okay. But anyway, we identified the nurse. Her name was Adeline Fatton. And she was exactly as the mortician described, that she looked like a young Audrey Hepburn, the actress, and big black eyes. She had considered going into the sisterhood, into a convent, prior to going into the Army nursing corps. We even checked out a number of retirement convents in the Minneapolis area where she was originally from. Then we did confirm that she had been transferred to a base outside of London, England, within weeks after the incident. And what Glenn Dennis was told was that she was killed in a plane crash with like 4 or 5 other nurses within a few weeks after she had been transferred. We confirmed that that never happened. There was no plane crash involving any medical staff anytime during that period, but that she did die a number of months thereafter of a childhood disease. That's what the family was told.
Wow.
And but again, another witness who conveniently, is essentially taken off the stage.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, here's another question from Julie Farrell. Do you think the CIA and the Air Force were stood up with the mandate to cover up the phenomena? So were they, I guess she's asking if they cooperated with or were given the mandate.
What's interesting is that it was immediately after Roswell. It was that summer of '47. That was the beginning of the CIA.
Yeah.
Its predecessor was the CIC, Counterintelligence Corps, which did have an office at Roswell. And they answered directly to Washington. They took their marching orders from Washington.
I want to bring up a name here. George Bush.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. He knew. He's been a part of it ever since. He is was the director of the CIA back then.
You're talking about George Sr. George Sr.
Yes,
right?
Senior, yes. This is not a joke. It is serious stuff. And people don't know what goes on around them, even people in the government, because there are levels and levels and levels of things going on around them. And these people seem innocuous or maybe, and they're not. They're part of it. And you never know who it is, because some of them are very, very good of staying out of the direct line of sight of everybody and everything. They're protected in their knowledge. And you have no clue who in Washington right now knows and doesn't know. And they all pretend not to know. And Congress pretends, but it's not true.
Some of them do.
Yes.
No. And we know that in 1952, immediately after the Washington overflights in July of 52, and then as far as the CIA became directly involved in 53. And they have been essentially calling the shots on the subject ever since. They are the ones that, granted, you can file freedom of information requests through the CIA. You cannot through the National Security Agency, NSA. And their budget is about 4 times bigger than even the CIA. So you have departments of intelligence that are essentially running the show. Let me tell you a quick, you mentioned George Bush, but let me tell you a quick George W. Bush story, his son.
Okay.
And who his first press secretary was Dana Perino, who's on Fox News. And Dana was speaking with a co-host on one of the Fox programs, and Roswell came up. And the co-host made the comment, well, you worked for the man. Did you ever, ask him? Did you ask the president about Roswell? And this is on live television. And she says, well, as a matter of fact, I was with him in the Oval Office on one occasion. And I asked him, I said, Mr. President, what can you tell me about Roswell? And he was behind his desk and he looked up at me. He smiled and he winked. Didn't say a word. And that was it. That
says a lot.
Yeah, that says a lot. It says a lot.
Don't you find it funny that George Jr. was a pilot? Think about that critically. Think about that. A pilot. A jet pilot.
Well,
he flew.
It was Air National Guard, but nonetheless, yeah. I mean, and he was an F-16, and as a result, he was highly trained.
Yeah.
I mean,
observational. Let's put it that way.
As well, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell you something. When I was a little girl, my father came home one night and destroyed most of the house. Every glass object, the metal door off the hinge, you name it. My brother and I were sent to my room. I climbed in my closet with him. I didn't want to hear it. About an hour went by, and the house went totally quiet. And my mom's neighbor came over and picked my brother and I up and took her to her house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were there for about a week.
A responsible thing to do, right?
When I got back, my mom said, we're not going to see your dad for a while. And she said, he's in the hospital. I said, okay. And after 30 days, she came home one night and said, well, we're going to go see him. And she said, I want you to understand something. He's going to be under guard. Mm-hmm. And we have to watch what we say to him. And I said, okay. And we got there. Now, you remember, I'm psychic. I can hear what my dad thinks. And when I got in the door, my father looked at me, and they looked at me because there were guards in the room and a psychiatrist. And my dad looked me dead in the eye, and the only word that I got from his brain was, say nothing to me. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was still in the hospital for another 3 weeks after that, and they finally let him come home.
That's not for a physical malady.
No, he knew. He went nuts because he couldn't take anymore because of what he knew. Mm-hmm. He was sick and tired of being sick and tired of all of it.
Yes.
He refused to talk to me about it for years. And finally, in the last year or two of his life, he finally spoke on it with me. And basically, I want to tell you something. About 6 months after that incident, and he came home, somebody in the CIA tried to grab me and my friend coming home from school. Literally tried to grab me. I'm a trained kid, airborne ranger daddy. Boy, do I know how to get away. And I ran. I dragged her the whole way with me. We're running in the door. They notified my mother. She got a hold of my dad. And the next thing I know, I've got private investigators watching me and my brother for 3 straight months. Went to school with us, the whole thing. And I said, what was that about? And he said, they know about you. You realize that, right? And I said, oh, okay. Because they did know about me.
Well, this
Years
is
later,
standard life in a military family. I mean, this is
yeah,
what these people
well,
are going through.
my father was a contactee as well, and he knew a lot about what went on. I'm telling you, he did. And so later in his life, he started talking French in the middle of the night. My mom was like, you need to come and listen to this. I took some French in high school and I could pick out what he was saying. But I realized my father spoke fluent French. Okay. And then I learned about my family ties at that point. And then I found out that my dad was dealing with the higher echelons and keeping us alive, literally keeping us alive, because that's how it is. And I always thought it's the mafia. If you look at it from a point of view where people are dying and they're shutting people's mouths and they're paying some people off and they just flat out disappear people for, their reasons, it is like the mafia. And my dad's last words to me were, do not do anything stupid.
Right.
And he said, you're doing a good thing. You bring out the information. As long as you're keeping it all in the light and being honest and showing your proofs, they can't stop you. See what I'm saying? They won't even attempt to come after you, although I don't hope you're not totally stupid about this. Watch your back, okay? Because they can lay in wait for a long time.
Don't be careless, right?
Yes, they are fearless. But it taught me at that young age to keep my damn mouth shut. That's why I didn't come out until I'm an older adult. And a lot of people in my life that I would be afraid they'd get are gone now. I feel safer about this. And that's the reason, literally part of the reason why I decided to do what I did. Do you know how many people are sitting there, Rob, that are in these situations, who have families like this, who know and they can't say a bloody word? Not at all. They're terrified because they will die. They will disappear. It's that bad, and the government's that mean about it, And I say mean because I want to use another word and I can't. Literally. We need to, when you write a book, you've got all your proofs in the book, right? And you've got the paperwork and knowledge of somebody that you knew really well. And we know who that is. And more of what he would have disclosed or talked about openly is in those papers, right?
Right.
Okay. How long will it take all the people who are hearing this right now to say, you know what? Let's have a conference. Why don't y'all come out and do a conference and we'll all attend? Let's bring Japan, because I know that there are people who are misinformation experts who are going to all these countries too and spewing misinformation in ways that I find unbelievable. And it's like somebody really needs to, let's have a global conference, not one that's like from Washington, but a literal global attended thing where you come out and you bring evidence and everybody else, and you try to convince some of these people who are still around with us to do films and then put those films up for the conference as well.
I would imagine some witnesses don't even fully disclose to you. There's, some stuff that they're just not willing to talk about. Well, there's, you know what I mean? They can tell so much.
We are working. That's one of our goals at ICER, the International Coalition of Extraterrestrial Research. We have the 5 Continent Summit in Moscow. A number of years ago, we have been invited on 2 separate occasions to do an international conference in Dubai. We have even had high-level talks about possibly doing some form of international conference at the Vatican.
That
would be
fun. Interesting, even.
So yes, we are working on that very premise, the idea that if all these countries come together and demand, disclosure,
right? Because it's not coming from Washington. It's just not. You just need to walk over their back.
We still have a few questions, so I'm hoping we can get to them. Do you still have to leave it? And
yes, I do. But I'll answer them quickly.
All right. I'm not gonna be able to get to all of them, but this is a simple one. Joe Smith, what shape was the Roswell craft?
Well, we only know the shape of the pod, of the capsule, egg shape, size of a small car. And as much as they tried to reassemble the pieces, because they were shards, they were fragments, the largest piece was about 4 foot in diameter, and there were other pieces about the size of a handkerchief, but beyond that, it was a puzzle with a million pieces. And so we have never heard that there was any final conclusion as to the original shape. Now, generally, the shape of the craft back at that time were disc shaped. They reported it, or even crescent shaped, like the Kenneth Arnold sighting, even the William Rhodes photograph on July 7th in Phoenix, Arizona. And that was like the heel of a shoe. So I guess we can again, it's not right, it's not fair to speculate. All we can do is, based on what other objects were photographed or reported at that time. But as far as Roswell, again, there was no determination as to the original shape.
Well, thanks for not speculating, because there's way too much of that in this field anyway.
Yes.
Just stick with the facts. They're amazing enough.
It's amazing. Exactly. Yeah. Why do we need to, sensationalize?
No.
All right. Here's an interesting question from Allison Carr. Donald, what was the worst threat they gave to a witness?
He was the public information officer at the base. He was First Lieutenant Walter Hott. He was the one who had dictated that very press release from the base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, that they had actually captured a flying saucer. And then he hand delivered it to the 2 radio stations, the 2 newspapers, and Walter saw much more. Walter not only handled as far as the wreckage, but he was also taken to the hangar where he saw the bodies. Okay. For 30 years, and his wife confirmed the same thing. They were getting death threats from 2 separate sources. They called one the Shadow and the other the Phantom, because they were clearly the same 2 men, same voices, but this went on for 30 years. That if you ever talk about this, we will not only kill you, we will kill your family, that type of thing. And so it's one thing if it's just a one-time threat, but just imagine. And at all hours of the night, his wife, Patricia, would talk about 3 o'clock in the morning. She'd pick up the phone, concerned it might be one of her 2 daughters. And there was this threat again. You tell your husband, Walter, that if he ever says a word about 1947, And so, yeah. Did happen.
Wow. All right. Here is another good question from Hayoka H. Is there any other crash event that Don considers legitimate besides Roswell? The Paradise Valley crash, Aztec,
no witnesses. Problem with Kingman as well, no witnesses.
Yeah, the government got after Roswell. The government became experts.
What about Arthur Stancil that was interviewed by Ray Fowler?
But that was with a pseudonym.
Yeah,
and we tried, and Ray, we had a witness that was able to corroborate some of the Kingman in that regard. Right. And then when I went to Kingman on 2 occasions, I tried to come up with even so much as a third-hand witness, and I couldn't get anyone to cooperate. It was like
maybe they got better.
It was like the word went out. It's like the word went out. You're not to talk to him. So, and that's when you run up against brick walls, and that's unfortunate.
Right.
Well, we just got a few more minutes left with you, and I want to pop this up because I had no idea you were an accomplished artist as well, working with the International UFO Reporter. And that's amazing. We were talking about this and how it's important as being an investigator to have the ability to do this art. Here's another one you did. Oh, no, that's not it. Now I am going the wrong direction. Hold on. Yeah, so you worked as an artist.
I have 2 degrees in art, and that would have been. I started out as a medical and technical illustrator, and then I was in a bad car accident, and it wiped out my depth perception. Because I have optic compression in my right eye, and but I went on to bigger and better things. So,
all right. Well, let me just flash up some of your books here, because I do want people to know that you have some books that people can learn more information of. Here's Roswell, the ultimate cold case.
Closed, yes.
Inside the Real Area 51, co-written with Thomas J. Carey. Startling new evidence, witness accounts. Of course, Witness to Roswell, unmasking the government's biggest cover-up.
That's
Now,
the
this is still
75th anniversary edition, right?
still the biggest story. It's the granddaddy of all UFO cases.
Yes.
Of course, cover-up at Roswell.
You'll see, and we always have been lucky. Like we've had Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14, did one of our forwards, and we had Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico did the forward to one of our books. And here you saw Dr. David Helyar of Cornell University. And who did Helyar work with for 30 years but Carl Sagan?
Oh.
And his whole forward is about the fact that Sagan told him that he considered Roswell the most thoroughly and most convincing UFO case of all time. As big a skeptic as Sagan was, that he still felt that Roswell, met the criteria of a legitimate case.
So yeah, you guys check out these books. There's quite a few of them, and I'm hoping there's more on the way.
In fact, I have another one due by August.
Oh, fantastic.
Awesome. Well, will you come back?
Oh, yeah, you're coming back after. Yeah.
Yes. And just a quick summary of that particular book. I'm taking as far as all the cases of the violation of not only First Amendment, but due process, civil rights, everything that they did to the witnesses, the threats, what they did in the kidnapping, how they shut down the press. And then at the end of each chapter, I have 3 lawyers commenting independently of how this broke the law.
Right.
Then the skeptics, you can argue with the judicial system. It's not me any longer or the witnesses. The fact that in kidnapping the rancher, you broke the law. And I have a retired judge who is going to do my forward. So we're going to hit them. This is going to be Roswell's day in court.
Yay.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Oh, I can't remember.
The truth's going to come out. You can try to cover it up. You can alter it. You can lie about it. But you cannot destroy it.
No, you cannot destroy it because it's still the truth. It's still the truth. And as I said, I just want to be at the finish line when it all comes out. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who solves this, who finally breaks the code. I just want to be there. If the thing is, if they win, we all win. That's the point. All of us, who are living as far as that day, that's what we all live for.
Wow. Well, thanks very much, Don. It was awesome. We're going to reach out to you to book another date because you're endlessly fascinating.
Thank you.
And
I always enjoy it. And next time I'll try to give you the full 2 hours. But send me your schedule again for the future towards the end of summer.
What day? Do you know what day in August your book's coming out?
No, it's first due.
Okay.
Yeah. But once it's submitted, I can talk about it.
Okay. All right.
I can talk about it. And as I mentioned with this upcoming trip, I'll be able to talk about hopefully some of the new information. So.
Okay.
Very cool.
Right.
Well, thanks for doing the good work. Keep it up.
Thank you both, and you as well, both of you. Thank you again. Good night.
Good night. All right.
Okay.
We are going to.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to have to close the show without Don, you guys. I'm so sorry.
No.
But if you have any questions about that, perhaps we can discuss. Certainly happy to do it. And
One of the things about Hynek that amazed me is he's got all his notes and all his books and everything he wrote about it. He's got all his files. He spent a lot of time with Hynek, and Hynek taught him a lot of things about things that were going on. And he's very, very indeed in that circle. And I wish he'd write a book about that. I think that Alan Hynek is one great source of information that is under, and he's got a son that knows a lot as well.
Yeah, Paul Hynek. I want to get him on the show too.
Yes, absolutely.
He's like a real nice guy, and he's definitely doing the lecture circuit. There are some questions here that are aimed towards us. So,
okay. All right.
But I want to ask you one first, because you asked the ETs about Roswell. Did they offer it? And what exactly did they tell you?
about a year and a half before I spoke with you, I let them know that I was going to just come out and try to help with disclosing truth. And they sat me down and said, well, the things you need to know at this point. When I was growing up, I was told not to read UFO books, not to pay any attention to what was going on, that it would taint my understanding because the misinformation was so bad. And they wanted me to know and understand from their perspective, the truth that way. And they said, well, now it's time to let you in on everything else. And there were three key things that they talked to me about. One was Roswell and the history of it and why. And there were some other incidences. There was a couple before Roswell that nobody absolutely knows. And then before
Really?
that, yes. And I know about it. I'm intimately related to it in a weird way. And and I'm not allowed to talk about it yet because it could cause death in people's lives, and I can't go there. And then there's another one that they wanted me to understand the information coming from World War II because of the misinformation was so bad, and they wanted me to know the truth about that. And basically, I understand now how they went to extraordinary lengths to misdirect the human population about what's true and what's not. They concocted a story. They wove a web of unbelievable intrigue and lies, and it stands and remains to this day. People still utter these words, and it's something that I am up against in trying to teach the truth about them and the science behind it. And it's almost like cutting off a finger at a time. And so yes, I know about Roswell. I knew that there were two craft. There were actually three. One didn't go down, and that one that he describes as being the center of the craft is not. It is an actual drone with two AI in it.
And did the ETs debunk some of the other cases? Like
Yes.
Aztec
Yes.
or
I know a lot about it. Well, you bring stuff up to me, and when I say to you, nope, no.
I know.
Just because,
I'm gonna argue with you. You're like, no.
no, not happening, didn't happen. And that's sad to me because we all need to know the truth, and people are really kind of invested in it. I mean, once you learn that something's occurring around you, like you, who went to great lengths to research all this, everybody deserves a chance to do that in a straight line toward what all the truth really is, so that they can get rid of the stupid misinformation and the outright lies and all of that, and understand the science between all of this.
I
That's
got involved in this field so naively, not even realizing just how thick the disinformation is and what a mess all this is.
Right.
So let's pop up a few questions here. And you guys, if you have any questions, we still have another good 20 minutes or so. Well, almost. Yeah, two. Okay, so here's one from White Dragon. And he's asking, sorry, Don's not here. We're bringing him back, you guys. Have you all heard of the current galactic conflict over access to Earth? Are you all even aware of it? I'll start. No, my quick answer is no. I haven't heard of it. I'm not aware of it. I have no good reporting on ETs fighting each other really at all. I've interviewed a lot of contactees. This does not come up. I've heard it. I've heard some of this. I suspect it's disinformation. It's my assessment. This is my opinion based on my research. But I would challenge anyone to find some good reporting on that would really, track.
Correct. And everybody who listens to me talk knows that I've explained why being in space is dangerous, and ET does not spend any time in space in the third dimension that they can help. They don't even play. It is not a joke. That is real. And it's because gamma radiation kills you. And if you spend too much time, you will die. It takes your DNA out. It ruins your immune system. It absolutely kills you dead. And it is a rapid evolution to that death. Okay, let's talk about the reality of this. Every planet in our solar system is not holding the kind of life that we live here on Earth. We're in an exceptional place. We have a magnetosphere that's supposed to protect us, and we are capable of living here and developing here and breeding here in relative safety, not total, but relative. Anything outside of this planet in our solar system is not worth having, not worth putting anything on. ET has no bases, nowhere, at no time. They had one on the moon and several others over different iterations of time, but they shut them down and they just always only had one. And it was AI doing the job, not anybody else biological or sentient living. The people that purport this are delusional. I'm going to say it outright. We're not pulling any punches today. We're going to tell the absolute truth. This does not exist. You are being absolutely lied to. There is no Thor hand or whoever that person is that they're talking about. There is no government working with each other. Valiant Thor, thank you. ETs do not work with humankind on this planet in any way, capacity, shape, or form. They take care of us sometimes. They keep us an eye on our health. They are our progenitors. They care whether we live or die, unlike a lot of other factions that are here. And they create no weapons of mass destruction against us or anybody else. We only do that. We're the ones with the problem, not them. They do not have governments as we understand them. They have what's known as consensus. They have beings that are so intelligent, so evolved, that they are the ones who give the most information out when people are having a tussle over what to do to go in the right way. Any ET that can make it to this planet is not going to hurt anybody here. They're nonviolent, literally, and they would not hurt a hair on our heads, and they haven't. And anything that you've heard to the contrary comes from the lying people here who don't want you to know the truth, i.e.
And there's more of them than people realize.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of money. This is a very orchestrated, concerted campaign of disinformation that is no joke.
Right. I'm not going to name names. They're out there and they're spreading vicious lies and delusional lies on top of it. And they're saying things that cannot exist. And I'm going to say a couple of them. There is no governmental space program that's sending people to Mars. Okay, what is it, 20 and 20? No, Mars is a dead core planet. It has no magnetosphere. Its center is dead. It blew out. The entire surface of Mars blew off it in a cataclysmic event. It is outgassing. That's why you see rumbling on it from time to time or gas is coming out of it. But nope, no life, zero, zilch. And any human being that attempts to go there wouldn't live 5 minutes because the time it takes to get there and then get there and get out for 5 minutes, they'd already be dead. That does not happen. It is a physical impossibility for human to exist in that environment in any way, shape, or form. There is no shielding from that. The ISS doesn't shield their astronauts from this gamma radiation. They come back injured, every last one of them. The amount of time they spend on the space station derases their DNA. It injures it, and it changes it. That is a fact. Look it up, okay? Going to the moon is a big, dangerous event for astronauts, and we've had plenty of time to learn the science of this, but y'all weren't taught. So we've got generations of people who have no clue, none. And I'm so sorry about that, but you all are capable of learning on your own, and you can look this up. You can go to NASA files, and you can look up the truth about what gamma radiation is and what it does to our astronauts. They have the proof. It's out there. Go look. Okay? All right. Next.
All right. Let us get to another question then, because there are some really good ones here. And this one is from Janice Connett. Because our government keeps these secrets, do you think that first contact that is worldwide will come from another nation, even Russia? We've already had first contact.
Yeah, everybody's had first contact. Everybody's been contacted. Trust me, you have. You've been touched by them at least once in your lifetime. We already have contact. It isn't first contact. And ET's not here right now because our magnetosphere
might come from another country.
Maybe. That would be, you know what? I would love for them to do it.
Mexico,
honestly.
Chile, they've been a little bit more forthcoming than the U.S. in some ways.
I don't know. I think they're
the highest level.
Government.
They cooperate.
Our government goes down into the Americas. You got to watch out for that. Yeah. Russia, China. That would be interesting. Maybe that's why they don't like Russia and China. Maybe they're willing to tell the truth and they're not. Think about that. Hey,
who knows? Might be a rogue government out there and says, you know what? Carefully orchestrate their disclosure, and boom, it's too late. It's out.
Yeah,
that would be amazing. All right, here is a question which I think I know what you're going to say. This is from Studio Opinions. Dolly, can microwaves cause a craft to fail?
No, not at all. They are covered in an electromagnetic graviton field. It is impenetrable by microwave transmissions. It will bounce off of them like you would bounce radar off a rock. It is that tight and that massively energetic. We don't have any technology whatsoever to bring one down, period, the end. The only reason that they crash is because our magnetosphere is going to, and we're down 40% at this point, and there's no more cohesion for them to fly on here. And they're not here. They left 2 years ago. Never doubt that for a minute. I'm telling you the absolute truth. They're not here. They're not in our solar system. It is dangerous here right now. We're going through an electromagnetic current sheet. Our sun is at solar maximum, and it's popping off. And every time it puts a CME, do you want to know why the NASA didn't launch yesterday or today, and it's going to be a couple days? Because we had a giant CME, and they're not even telling the truth about how serious this one is and the fact that we're going to take direct impact from it. Our magnetosphere is
more and more.
All right, and they can't launch that crap because it'll hit it and demolish it. And they got live people going up this time, so they have to protect them. Pay attention.
Oh, okay. By the way, Janice says I did mean disclosure. So yeah, okay. Chile, I'm telling you, France could be a tiny little country. Who knows? I hope it does happen. I'm not holding my breath, honestly.
We're on a timeline now. They have very little time, and they have an agenda. And, they say, well, what's ET's agenda? That's the pot calling the kettle black. It's not ET's agenda. It's theirs. They have the agenda, and it's serious. Think about that. Okay.
ETs don't have an agenda, per se. Right. Okay. Here is a good question that you might have some insight into, and I certainly have my feelings about it. From QC the Bob. I have a question. Do you think General Dwight D. Eisenhower warned everyone about the military-industrial complex because he lost control of the ET project? Yeah, I don't know how much control he had over it as president. This is being handled by different forces. The president has a very limited amount of power.
Right. ET did contact Eisenhower. And the only reason they did so was because he understood the machine of what's going on. And he was a president with his hands tied because there was already a government in place. And he was only doing what he could do. He knew a lot. He knew a lot more than you all realize, especially since he met with ET. And the only thing they wanted to know from him is this. They wanted to inform him about how dangerous nuclear systems were, and that we were going to kill ourselves, and how expansive this idea is. And they asked him to at least try to talk other countries into going down off of it and destroying the ability to have nuclear on this planet, because we were coming into something, and he knew about that as well, that was going to cause this to kill all of us. Now I'm going to bring up why they were so adamant. Oh, by the way, his answer to them was, it's a deterrent. And everybody believes it's a deterrent to world war. And he had no ability to stop them from it or us. Now, let's move forward years and years and years. Every time we have a CME, we have the problem of now looking forward to our grid going down. I want you all to consider that there are nuclear stations, power stations all over this planet. Every country has them. Every single country has them. What do you think is going to happen when the grid goes down? How do you think containment is going to stay contained in those moments when the power is not going to come back up to keep them contained? They will all melt down all at the same time. You saw what happened to Fukushima, and they were trying really hard to stop that. There won't be anybody to stop a nuclear plant from melting down in this situation. There will be nothing they can do because none of their vehicles will work, none of their safety equipment will work, none of their hoses will work. There will be nothing. They couldn't pour concrete if they wanted to. It's because a worldwide grid down means nothing works. Do you live near one? Are you within 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles of a nuclear plant? What's going to happen to you when this occurs? Do you understand that you have the ability, all of you, to tell your government that this is it? The jig is up. What the hell do you think you're doing? And you all need to understand that science is science, and you might not have got it in high school. You might not have got it in college like you should have, but by gosh, somebody's trying to tell you to ask the right questions, and this is a big one. What do you think is going to stop containment from going out? You hear threats of EMPs from China. They could fly a plane over us at altitude and throw one on us and knock our entire country out. All our nuclear stuff's going to go off if that happens. How many people will go dead from that? Think about it. I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm trying to wake you up to what the truth really is. And we need to stop asking silly questions and worrying about what ET thinks. We need to worry about what we're doing and how we're handling everything. We caused this mess by our inaction or their action. Take your pick. But we all are responsible for this, all of us. And we need to start thinking straight. ET's not our enemy. We are. Okay.
All right. Let's pop up some more questions because they're suddenly coming in fast and furious. It's time for another Q&A show, Dolly. Okay. Sunny Burnett. Do alien encounters ever only involve sound? You hear them but can't see them. Certainly. People have had a UFO fly over, and all you hear is the buzzing sound, and that's it. I mean, they can contact people in all kinds of different ways. Telepathically, you can hear their voice. It's not necessarily going to be a face-to-face contact. Inspiration, even. People, and sometimes people don't remember the whole thing. They just remember the buzzing noise coming towards them, and so.
Did you know that when they put you to sleep with propofol, you hear a buzzing sound? And that's not uncommon in a lot of the different drugs that they use to put people to sleep, or psychedelic drugs, things like that. Sodium pentothal. The human mind is a fragile thing, and the government knows how to use it on you anytime they want. Now, the only buzzing you're going to hear from ET is it's a low thrumming buzzing. It's not a loud one, high-pitched or irritating one. It's just you feel it. It's like an elephant roaring or a lion roaring. You can feel it. You hear it and you feel it. ET's sounds are like that when they're low. If you hear a high-pitched squealing sound, that's going to be not ET. And you need to think about why. Okay? And microwave transmissions do emit a high-pitched squealing sound. Think about that. And we know that they can transmit microwave messages all across this planet and do. Okay.
Okay. Oh gosh, CT Guitar Guy. What is your opinion on Rick Doty's take on Roswell? He said it was two egg-shaped craft that crashed into each other. The intact one wasn't found till much later.
The debris outweighed and was larger, 3 to 4 times larger than that second craft.
Rick Doty, I don't consider how am I going to put this in a way? A trustworthy source, because he's a self-admitted disinformation agent.
Right.
And he is. So that's all I've got really to say about Richard Doty. I mean, I wish him all the love and truth in the world. But, I don't think he's a trustworthy source. My opinion. Okay. Now, this I know. You probably aren't aware of this one, Dolly. This is from Don Curtis. President Dolly, are you familiar with the Roswell alien interview by Matilda O'Donnell McElroy that was posted on the internet several years ago? Like the first ETs that answered questions with her. I am aware of it. It's a book by Spencer. I forget his first name. Lawrence Spencer. It's a good book. I read it. It was very compelling. It's not true. We actually did talk to Don about this on the previous episode, and pretty much all the Roswell researchers have said, no, this is fictitious. And I believe it was Don, if I remember correctly, that said the author admitted that it was in fact not true.
Not true, right.
So, but it's a good book. I will tell you, wow, it was good all the way to the end. I enjoyed it.
Description is great. Sometimes, you can read it on.
It was like, wow, it was a nice surprise ending.
Right.
Okay. Now, that was a good question, Don. An important one. Morgan, someone said the Roswell cover-up was done so quickly. Wait, let me see. Someone said the Roswell cover-up done so quickly proved it wasn't the first crash. The military were very experienced in fast clear up. This is from Morgan. Yeah, I think we do. There's the Cape Girardeau crash in Missouri, which predates it, and a few others as well. So I think they did have some experience, but they sure bungled up Roswell, didn't they?
Yes. I
Okay.
think there were people who really wanted it to come out. That's what I think.
We'll try to get through all these questions, guys, but we're running out of time quickly. Okay, QC the Bob is asking, okay, I think this is in response to, why are ET here and what are they doing? What about the 10,000 cases of missing 411? I talked to David Paulides firsthand. And the fact is there's probably a number of different things going on with people who go missing. Everything from trafficking to getting lost to runaways to other nefarious agents within our government, all kinds of things. Wild animals, as far as UFOs, people have tried to link this together, and there's no strong link up to it. There are cases where people do go with the ETs, and there are a few cases where people have said, I'm going with the ETs, and they disappeared. But as far as people disappearing in national parks, there's not someone else out there on the side saying, well, I saw a UFO and they disappeared. And even that would be a possible false corroboration. You can't say someone disappeared and there was a UFO, that the UFO took them. Until you get a direct link, you cannot, this is why I like Don's research so much. He's not speculating. He's just telling the facts as you know it. But yeah, a lot of people disappear, and I think there's multiple factors.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to hide that one. Okay. Let's see. Some of these are just comments. Let's bring up this one because this.
Way back at the beginning of the night, I saw a comment that we didn't answer a question in our last show. Do you see that one way back at the beginning?
Yeah, but it didn't have the question in it, so I don't know what it was. I think he said it was by email. But this is from Studio Opinions. Dolly, did the government make an agreement with ET like Eisenhower?
No, absolutely not. You don't make
with a corrupt government, they're not going to trade technology.
Right. I want you to understand how advanced ET is. This is hard for some people. It's like knowing how many, galaxies might be in our universe. It's a large number. ET is evolved. Our understanding of time here is skewed because they can't really measure time. They can do radiocarbon dating, but the gamma radiation coming in derazzes it. It takes its half-life and changes it. It makes its components change over time. And certain microbursts from our sun, like CMEs, affect that even more. So the real numbers are astronomically high. Our universe is much, much older than you understand. Our universe is way older than you understand. And these beings have been around for billions of years. They are that advanced of us. They are our progenitors. We're all related to them. We come from them. They have different ethnicities of life like we do. We all look different, so do they, but we're all humanoid. We all have the same DNA. It is unconscionable for an advanced race, billions of years in advance of us, to be morally, ethically, spiritually stupid. They wouldn't be. They would have developed beyond anything that we could possibly imagine. We're still in the I hate you stage. We don't know what the word love really is. We're all trying to, but we don't understand what cooperation is here. That's how unadvanced we are. We may have some technology, but the technology they use is pure light technology. It is so high above what we could even conceive. It would seem more like magic, like Stephen Greer says, and you would think of them as gods because of that, because you just couldn't conceive of how they make things work. Nobody's coming here to hurt us. They're not bad guys. And those planets that are like ours, that are developing like ours, they can't get off and leave to go anywhere. They don't have that kind of technology to travel parsecs across the universe. So don't worry. ET's not the evil one. We are. Okay? Yep. All right.
Well, Dolly, we have just 2 minutes. So okay. I'm going to ask for a yes or no on this question. From Studio Opinions. Do ETs have vocal cords?
Yes, they do. Absolutely. They can even whistle. No kidding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this one, if you can answer this in 1 minute, I think then we'll have to close the show. Sorry, guys, I didn't get to all your questions, but we'll do a Q&A, I promise. But Macon Bacon is asked, how do we ease the effects of a coronal mass ejection?
You don't. You're a victim of it. Point blank. We live in a physical
There
world
must
and
be something we can do.
no, absolutely not. We are no. Life is lives on a dime. It's tangible and intangible. Our hard mainframe here, our planets, our solar systems, our galaxies inside this universe are all subject
We might
to
not be able to prevent
disastrous moments.
They're like a lead coffin.
No, a CME would melt the lead on top of all of us. Think about that. You know,
Okay,
they make metal. There's nothing you could do. You're a victim at that point. I want to tell you something.
So we
If our
run outside of the house and just pray.
No, pray. Go ahead. Dig a hole and get in it and cover yourself in plastic. You know, make a plastic bubble and just sit there and wait for it to be over with and then come back out and deal with the disaster that has occurred over you and try to survive that. That's what we're having to do. And if we had known this, if you'd known this 80 years ago, if we'd all been able to plan for this, we wouldn't have built cities like we have. We wouldn't have built anything like we have. We'd have all been living sustainably. We would have been able to deal with this no problem. But you weren't taught to do that. That's the government's fault. Asking them why. Okay.
All right. Well, I think that is all we really have time for. So.
Okay.
All
right. Yeah, it's the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have another Q&A soon, I think, and y'all just keep asking questions. Y'all need to know the truth. And Symmetry 2, we're working on it, and I'm gonna try to start making more videos, but I want y'all to take notes sometimes because I read in your comments afterwards that you hear what I'm saying, but not exactly what I'm saying. And there's a lot of confusion, and that's normal. Okay. Everybody does that.
Why we do these shows, you know,
yeah.
We all know we have to be told everything 3 times before it starts to sink in.
Right. But if you see me say something on a show, go back and watch that show till you hear what I said. One of the greatest things that we do that we shouldn't is we overwrite what's being said to us by our own minds. You're thinking about what's being said to you in real time. You shouldn't do that. You should just shut up and hear what's coming in at you and then decide what you think about it. It's like reading a book. You're not talking to the book while you're reading it, but you'll talk to whoever's talking to you while they're talking. That's hard. We shouldn't do that. We should.
Well, I want to give a shout out to all you guys. Thank you so much for the wonderful super chat. It means a lot. It helps us to continue to do this show because it does take a lot of time and energy and some money as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us each week. We really appreciate it. We've got a bunch of new guests lined up. We're definitely going to get
we got some good ones coming
back. And yes, Symmetry 2 is coming. Studio options. Don't worry. I'm doing more interviews probably tomorrow or sometime this week for sure. Thanks very much. And Dolly, you want to take us out? Here, wait, let me put up the banner which shows the actual call signs so people know.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, thank you all. I hope your Monday was great. I hope your weekend was great. We have a wonderful week in front of us. We have some CMEs coming in. Big energy. It will be in 24 to 48 hours. If you watch The Suspicious Observers, he announces as they're coming in to the hour almost. So watch that channel. He'll tell you. He puts up the NOAA predictions as well. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Be happy, be in joy, because while we're listening to all this stuff, we still have to be us and live our lives. We're coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the beautiful UFO Public Radio Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We're on Roku, we're on YouTube and Facebook. We love you guys. I want y'all to be happy and healthy and
have
fun. We'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you again. See you next week.